Hello and welcome to this webinar entitled Telematics, the Next Step. Thank you very much for dialing in today and joining us on this webinar. My name is Dave Nichols and I'm Professional Engagement Officer here at Break, the road safety charity. Firstly, thank you for everybody for attending, mainly from the UK, but we do also have people listening in from overseas as well, so thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thank you also to our speakers who you're going to hear from shortly for giving up their time and sharing their expertise and hopefully some tips and insight into this interesting topic, which hopefully you will find useful. Thank you also to Telegis for kindly sponsoring this webinar, and we will hear from Sergio from Telegis shortly. Just a couple of housekeeping style guides really, if you've never joined us before on a webinar. Hopefully you will have a drop-down menu on the right-hand side of your screen. On this you should have a question icon. You can click on this at any time and type a question if you have any questions for either myself or any of our speakers. You are in listen-only mode, so you are automatically muted, so you can't contribute to the webinar verbally unless I physically have to unmute you. So if you do want to ask a question, there is a raise hand icon as well. So you can either click on that and you can ask your question verbally, or if you prefer to just type your question into the question box, you can do that throughout the presentations. We will take questions at the end of each presentation, so I will give you a couple of minutes at the end of each presentation to put some questions to our speakers, but if you have any whilst they're talking, then do feel free to use that question panel. As I said, my name is Dave Nichols and I'm Professional Engagement Officer here at Break, the road safety charity. I'll give you a little bit of information about what's coming up today and also what we do here at Break. So as I mentioned, here are our main speakers that we'll be hearing from shortly. I'll be handing over to Sergio from Telegis, then Sol Jevons from the TransSafe network, and then Steve Palmer from Aviva. For those of you who are new to one of our webinars or new to Break, then great, and hopefully we can work closely with you in the future. For those of you that don't know too much about Break, we are a road safety charity, celebrated 20 years last year. We have two main aims. Firstly, to prevent road crashes and also to support the victim of road crashes. So we have a helpline and support services, and we support those who have been bereaved or seriously injured in road crashes. We do this with supplying literature through the police to all those that have been affected by a road crash. Obviously our main aim is number one, to try and prevent those road crashes happening in the first place, so we don't have to support those families and those families don't have to go through the heartache of losing someone in a road crash. So we do that through our campaign work and also through our educational work with both young people and also with fleets. Fleets and companies are a major part of our work, and working with people like yourselves who are listening in today to try and prevent those road crashes, especially involving an out-work driver, because they're on the road so much. So hopefully any work that we can do with yourselves to try and eliminate those crashes is good, a good thing all round. We are a communications charity, so through our Break professional service we share information and basically share best practice, hence today's webinar. So it's about sharing the best practice that's out there, most relevant information, and trying to inspire companies to take that on board and work to try and be the best they can. Just a couple of events that are coming up just to highlight to yourselves, and I will send this information at the end of today's webinar. We have an unusual and different topic in March that we've not run for a couple of years now, and this is a crisis response training. So is your company prepared? So this is looking at what you have in place within your organisation should the worst ever happen. If a crash or a major incident happens at your work, have you actually anything in place to deal with that, to deal with your driver, to deal with the families, to deal with the media that might come out of that. So it's something that we hope won't ever happen and hope that you never have to think of, but it is something that you need to be prepared and not reflect on the day. So it's a great training session. So 2nd of March, and that's in London. More details on our website. Our pledge workshop, we now have first one in London in March. This is free for all Brake Professional members. So if you're not a member of Brake, please get in touch to find out how you can be. And then our two main headline events are the Fleet Safety Conference and Fleet Safety Awards. For those of you who have entered before and for those of you who haven't, Fleet Safety Awards deadline is the 20th of May this year. So this is an opportunity for you to enter one of 13 categories on different areas of how you're trying to improve road safety within your organisation. Hopefully you might take some pointers out of today's webinar, or you may feel that actually you're already doing something with regards to telematics, and actually we do have entries which reflect that, so it might be something that you feel is worthy. Also, the 26th of May is our Fleet Safety Conference. Hoping to sell out again this year for this conference, so advise you to book as soon as possible if you haven't already booked your place for this conference. We have varied speakers from across the UK and sharing best practice again, including some of our Fleet Safety Award winners from last year. So it's a real good way of hearing what other companies are doing and picking up some ideas on how you can put those into practice within your fleet. So I have spoken enough, so I am now going to hand over to Sergio Barata from Telegis, who's going to welcome you and talk you through about what they offer and what they do and how they've worked with companies, and also through a case study as well. Thanks, Sergio.
All right, thanks, Dave. Really appreciate what is now our second opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas with the UK market and with Brake, in partnership with Brake, to really understand how large and small fleets across the UK are looking to bring in best practice, bring in safety for the benefits of their employees and their drivers. So I think our first message, Dave, if you could just flick to the next slide. In the previous webinar that we participated, our message was really around quality of data and scale of data. What we found with partners and with companies that are trying to deploy driver safety programs is that there is definitely some, I wouldn't call it insecurity or even being cynical, but I would say there is definitely parts of the business that are a little bit wary of these types of technologies, because driver safety also is now going into new, net new fleets. So typically in our world, light commercial vehicles, heavy commercial vehicles were really making up 90% of the market we addressed. But with with driver behavior opportunities, I think there are more and more professional fleets as well being brought into this message. And I think that's driven a lot through cultural expectations. So a lot of the professional fleets are driven by salespeople or senior managers, and I think the general best practice and the general rule of thumb in terms of trying to transition into these programs is, if the guys in the vans and the trucks are going to do this, then certainly the guys in the the professional fleets need to be participating and doing it also. So in our previous webinar, the focus, like I say, was really around the scale and the credibility of the data and the ability to break that data down into all those different business units, all those different designations, and make sure that line managers, supervisors, folks who take responsibility for people in the field had the right data at the right time. I think that message was well received. We certainly have many conversations with our UK partners and customers on that particular topic. But today, I think moving that conversation on, I think we're really looking at gamification, and that is really focused around the sustainability and reducing the overhead for large and small to medium businesses trying to sustain and actually trying to maintain this data and these programs in the field. What we found is that there was always this initial investment, this initial energy and effort into deploying and launching these programs, but over time, the ability to maintain and to commit that overhead and that resource from the middle management to do driver debriefs, to do analysis and one-on-one coaching opportunities with the drivers became difficult to sustain. So we definitely saw an opportunity. There's obviously a much wider market trend around mobile apps and and people leveraging mobile technology and just getting used to using their mobile technology, and that's pretty much what we did by launching our Telegist Coach app. So for us, a self-assessment model where the drivers themselves are being given an application on a mobile phone, smartphone, and able to actually analyze and assess their driving behavior, their driving style, and really being highlighted in terms of where there's opportunities. Message and very, like I say, very easy to adopt model for a lot of our customers. This, if I'm specifically now talking again about sort of light commercial and professional fleets, if you couple these with logbook applications, these really drive adoption. They really drive take-up within the fleets and become almost like an administrative advantage for the folks that are actually driving the vehicles themselves. So that is certainly what we believe is the next the next message in terms of trying to deploy this technology out into a very large fleets and actually trying to sustain the quality and the viability of these technologies. Thanks, Dave. If you move to the next one. In terms of where we think the message is going to go forward, so in terms of what happens next, if driver behavior is clearly very important to large corporate fleets and everyone in a vehicle, then certainly the emergence of OEM telematics, automotive partners and brands driving some of these initiatives so that you have factory-fitted solutions in place so that you reduce some of the operational overheads and requirements and cost of deploying telematics and deploying these technologies. That is certainly where we believe this message is going to go. This strategy is going to end up very much in partnership with the OEMs themselves. And we've certainly seen real tangible benefits just in the data that we can pull from the vehicles. So if that is seatbelt usage or tire pressure usage, these are all valuable data points that can be added to the driver behavior program and can actually not just focus necessarily on the driver themselves, but actually be proactive and make the vehicle a safer product or a safer environment for the drivers as well. Thanks, Dave. If you can move on. So I'm pretty much getting to the close of my time. I think what I wanted to share with you was two examples of customers that really deployed the technology and really saw reductions in other productivity and efficiency parts of their business as well, or improvement, should I say. This cultural shift from actually taking what is essentially one of the most important tools that most of these field personnel use within their designations, and actually changing their mindset and changing their culture in terms of how they use that, how they drive that, has also actually added upside and benefits to some of these large fleets in other parts of what these personnel and people do as well. So Rain for Rent is more heavy industry type example, but we've seen this across a broad spectrum of our customer base, where if you just get the person in the vehicle to think slightly differently in a slightly more safe and efficient way, there are definitely other benefits and positive impacts on other parts of their business as well. And then in the last slide, Dave, if you pull to the last one. This is actually a very large-scale customer with over 20,000 assets in the field. Again, heavy utility services, heavy industry. And although these 50% of these people literally walk around with chainsaws all day, driving the vehicle is still in the top 2 or 3 most dangerous things that they're actually doing within their working day. So they deployed a driver behavior program specifically focused on speeding. In a very short space of time, once we put in-cab alerts and speeding reports into their day-to-day working process, and a 90% reduction in speeding, 69% reduction in or improvement in safety, but a 22% improvement in productivity as well. So there were no elements of those best practices that were actually focused on productivity, but at the very same time, they just realized that the tone and the mentality within the cab changed to the point that even the productivity and the efficiency improved as well. So from my side, thank you for your time today. It's always good to engage with UK fleets and really understand what it is that you're looking to deploy. If you have any questions, I'm available now or can be reached afterwards through Dave. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergio, for your time. We also have a video that we will show, which I will share with everybody afterwards. Unfortunately, the technology isn't on our side and is a bit jerky for you all, so we will share that with you at the close of this webinar. As I mentioned before, if you have any questions at all for Sergio, then please feel free to type them now into the question box and I can put them to him. Alternatively, if you suddenly come up with questions later or at the close of this webinar, then please feel free to email them to us and we can put them to Sergio after the webinar. But thank you very much, Sergio, for your time. Really appreciate that, and hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight of how some other companies can use telematics. I'm now going to hand you over to Sol Jevons from the TransSafe Network, who's going to talk to you a bit more about common practices and how to use telematics to best effect.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I'll sort of run through what I'm going to talk about. There were a couple of things that was thrown up by Sergio, which are going to be kind of echoed in what you're going to see as we run through. A lot of our experience in working with fleets that use telematics is across a variety of quite harsh operating environments. Location a little bit more mainstream. As a result, you've been through quite a few of these sort of teething processes that you may find yourself experiencing if you're sort of more recent to using telematics. I thought it might be helpful just to make sure that we're all thinking of the same thing. If we look for a definition of telematics, it comes up with sort of really helpful things like that. The integrated use of telecommunications and informatics applications in vehicles with control of vehicles that were actually, what is it? It's everything from your sat-nav to connected vehicles technology. So everything from a fleet of vehicles that are using the highway, operating, capable of sending each other information about incidents, weather conditions, traffic conditions, that kind of thing, to really simple, fairly standard commonplace IT in vehicles. In terms of what we're going to be talking about today, it's very much the telematics as a fleet management tool. What does that actually cover? Well, the key thing, and the thing that Sergio obviously touched on quite a bit, is the driver performance management aspect of it, and that's what I'm going to mainly be talking about. But there are other benefits that you might get from it as well, depending on the system you use. You might want to use it for tracking your vehicles, tracking your assets. You might want to use it to improve your routing and scheduling. You might want to use it for the communication of mobile data, whether that's from the vehicle and your employees out to, back to a central resource, or whether that's from a central resource getting information out to drivers themselves. Telematics increasingly now obviously is also linked to insurance, so it may be that if you've got the right telematics solutions and you've got tracking on vehicles, where they are, what times they're operating, how fast they're being driven, etc., that you may want to move towards a telematics-based insurance, either one that is purely a telematics-based insurance or one where you use the telemetry data that you're getting from your vehicles and use that to argue as to why you might be able to affect your premiums, or even get advice from the insurer on what patterns and trends you should be looking for in your data to try and get those premiums down. Telematics can also be used for incident management, so if you have a vehicle that's broken down or been immobilized in some way, you can know about that straight away with certain telematics pieces of equipment, so you can actually start managing that incident straight away, whether that's a replacement vehicle, whether that's contacting the driver, whether that's trying to engage some form of emergency response either internally within the organisation or whether you need to summon the emergency services. And there is another continuing list that would go on for as long as we wanted to, depending on which different types of systems we're looking at and what you want them to do. So what are the reasons why people choose telematics? Okay, well, a fairly strong one is because the boss wants you to. If the boss comes along and says, I think we should be using telematics, in some cases that's a reason why some people start to look at it. In some cases, it's the salesman was really good. You met someone at a conference. This quite often is why the boss has developed an interest. They meet someone at a conference, they see something at an exhibition, they hear something from a professional peer, and they decide that they want this all singing, all dancing bit of kit in your vehicles. Sometimes people do it because they start to feel a little bit left behind. It seems like everyone else is busy using telematics, and so they feel that they should be. And actually, obviously, the best way to come to it is if you've identified an operational need which is actually best met with a telematics solution. It's something that you're going to have to invest some money in. It's something you're going to have to invest some time in, getting it up and running, learning how it works. It's something that to get the most out of it, you actually have to invest some time in on an ongoing basis. And I'll talk a little bit about how to make the best effort of that. But it's only really worth doing if you can identify something where a telematics solution is going to help you do the job better. In terms of choosing a solution, try and think about what you need it to do now and what you might need it to do in the future. If at the moment what you're trying to do is open a bottle, then actually it might be that a relatively cheap, straightforward, simple solution is what you need. It may be that what the boss has got in mind or what the salesman wants to sell you is something that looks a little bit more like that. But actually, even if your current requirement is the image that you see on the left, it might be that having something that's a little bit more advanced, got a few extra things, it actually meets more of your needs now than you were looking to solve with the telematics solution, but also possibly covers some of your future needs. But there's no point going down the route of something that is going to be so all singing, all dancing that you're never either going to use all of its functionality, although you will be paying for it, or worse still, that it ends up being a compromise and it doesn't quite do the thing that you wanted it to originally do as efficiently as it could do. Among the key issues, first off is reliability, and that's not just the reliability of the equipment itself, although that's key, because obviously if the equipment stops recording, then you've got issues with that, but also in terms of the data reliability. The fastest way to lose credibility with your drivers or routers and schedulers with this kind of equipment is if they can see that the data that's coming back is inaccurate. Any kind of information system will from time to time produce erroneous data. Every piece of system will from time to time need calibrating. You need to make sure that the reliability rates you're getting in terms of the equipment and the data are accurate. If you get someone and you tell them that they were speeding when they know that they weren't, or if you tell them that they were in one location when they know that they were somewhere else. In one case we saw a vehicle which was actually had crashed and was on its side, and looking at the data afterwards, the vehicle had moved sort of 15 meters within the process, and the fleet manager had tried all sorts of explanations as to why this might be, and actually it was purely and simply that what he was looking at was just a GPS plot, and didn't understand that its accuracy was only down to within 15 to 20 meters on the system he was using. But he was adamant that the vehicle must have moved. So making sure that you actually understand the system and that you can communicate it with the users is key. Also making sure that you've got the technical support. There are thousands of different companies around the world, all using variations on the same basic technologies. Once you've decided what kind of system you think you're interested in, there will be probably at least dozens of companies who could possibly offer you the service. If they don't have local technical support, they're of very little use to you, and if they don't have good technical support, they're of very little use to you. You need to make sure that on the occasions when things go wrong, on the occasions when things aren't running as smoothly as you'd like them to, that support and that backup and the after-sales service is really there. Take some interest in how much the system is going to be able to do for you automatically. The systems are capable of producing a vast amount of data. What you don't want it to do is produce a whole load of kind of raw numbers that you then have to go through and analyze. So if the system can produce automatic reports, you set a report frequency and then you just forget about it and that report then pings into you, that's better than having to sit down and go through and click 5 boxes on a menu saying generate report every Friday or the end of every month. So have a look at how much the system is going to be able to do for you on an automatic basis, and also have a look at how much information you actually need. Again, going back to the bottle opener versus Swiss Army knife scenario, having a whole load of information is great, but you only actually need to be looking at the information that you can actually do something about. Ideally, you want a lot of information which is dealt with by exception alerting. So, do you need to know that all of your drivers have been under the speed limit all week? No, you probably don't. Do you need to know that the sort of accounts director is now driving at 110 miles an hour down the M4 at this very moment? Yes, you probably do. So think about how you get notified, when you get notified, and what you get notified about. If you've got someone who's doing some serious speeding in that way, and their data is hidden in the middle of every other vehicle that's behaving itself, obviously that's no good to you. You need the other data there. You can look at it if need be, but actually it's that alerting of the exceptions that are the key thing. And again, having said about the sort of Swiss Army knife aspect, also think about whether the telematics solution that you're looking at offer anything else which would be a useful addition. So for example, some of the telematics solutions will be able to generate reports for incident investigations. Some of them will be able to help with routing and scheduling. Some of them you can plot routes through. Some of them will alert you to traffic and might increase efficiency. Have a look at what those other things might be, because once you've narrowed it down to a couple of systems which are both offering you what you need, it might be that one of them is going to have just a slight edge over the other one through some of those additional features. What are the downsides? Okay, well, one obviously is cost, and there is an upfront cost with most of these things. Sometimes there is an ongoing cost, depending on how the whole thing is financed, depending on what the extras are, depending on what the support package is. Obviously, as with anything, is that just going to be a pure cost, or is it going to be an investment? And that largely is going to come down to both selecting the right equipment in the first place and also how you use it, which we'll talk about. A key thing to avoid, and I've sort of referred to it already, is this information overload issue. If I tell you that you can go out and buy some fuel at the moment and it's about £1 a litre, that's great information, really helpful. It's useful to know that that's how much the fuel's going to cost. If I tell you that the VAT on that is about 16.5 pence, then if you need to reclaim the VAT, then that's really useful information. However, if you're not going to need to reclaim the VAT, you don't actually need that information. But those two bits of information aren't impacting on you too much. If we actually break down the cost of a litre of petrol into the duty, the product, the VAT, how much profit the retailer's making, their retailer cost, site costs, the costs of delivery, actually getting it to the place, then all that does is generate a whole load of information which, although potentially interesting, isn't actually what you need to focus on. You need to focus on how much is a litre of fuel costing you and potentially how much the VAT is. So now we've got a situation where the VAT figure is hidden and the actual key number, the how much does a litre of fuel cost, requires you to do some calculations to work out what it is. If you then delve into the product cost, then the oil company will turn around and they'll tell you, oh, well, we've got exploration licenses, we've got the seismic area of exploration, we have to drill exploration wells, that's about $100 million on its own, we've got to develop the field, we've got to put all the infrastructure in, we've got to actually start producing, we've got to get the crude oil out of the field and away to the refinery, we've got exchange rate costs because of the fact that oil is priced by dollars, and so depending on the strength or weakness of the dollar, you've got the refining costs. None of that actually impacts on you. All of that information is just going to swamp you with useless data that you don't want. And it's exactly the same situation with telematics. Keep bringing yourself back to those original questions of what do you want telematics to do for you, what information do you need, and when do you need it? And make sure that whatever system it is, it's very easy to get sucked into the amount of information that a system can provide you with, rather than focusing on whether that system is actually providing you with the effective information. The other thing that telematics can leave you with is actually some incriminating evidence. Before, you were in blissful ignorance in terms of data that you had as to which of your vehicles were speeding and by how much they were speeding. You didn't know whether your drivers were braking particularly harshly, other than by the wear rate on their brakes and tyres if they had dedicated vehicles. You didn't necessarily have information on their harsh acceleration, other than, again, wear on vehicle components and their fuel use. As soon as you've got all of those things, when something goes wrong, that can all mean that you, as an organisation, are starting to become more culpable and more liable from a legal perspective than it would do if you didn't have that information. If you know that your van fleet are constantly going up and down the motorway at 90 miles an hour and you've done nothing about it, and that's the key factor, you're actually more vulnerable if there's a crash than if you were completely oblivious to the fact that that was what they were doing. So one of the things you have to make sure you're doing is acting on the information. It's really, really good to have that information, but you do then need to act on it. We heard from Sergio about the initial energy that will arrive when you first introduce this kit, and that it then falls off. And a good example of not just the fact that you've invested some money and then you've lost the benefit of it, but of the fact that it can actually be hugely counterproductive was one fleet we worked with in West Africa, where they'd introduced a very, very basic form of driver behaviour monitor. They'd immediately seen a reduction in crashes of about 25% across their fleet, which is a fairly typical figure, around somewhere between 20 and 30%, typically sort of between 24 and 27 is pretty much industry standard of what you'd expect to see. What they then discovered was that after about 6 months, half of the fleet had maintained that reduction in crashes, and the other half of the fleet had actually risen back up and were now having more crashes than they'd been having in the first place. And we went and talked to the two managers who were in charge of the two halves of the fleet. And we spoke to the guy who had managed to maintain the reduction in crashes and said, you know, what do you do with the data? And he said, oh, well, he said, I have a look at the data on a weekly basis. At that stage, the vehicles were having to come in and have it downloaded rather than it being an automated system. But he said, I have a look at the data on a weekly basis. He said, any of the drivers who are not performing terribly well, he said, I'll initially have a chat with them. If they're performing really badly, then obviously I'll have to go in and have more of a discussion with them. I've split all of the drivers into teams so that there are teams who are you know, who get a team score. So if someone is performing poorly, their colleagues within the team, their peers, will actually put some pressure on them to start performing better. The winning team, if you like, is eligible for a certain set of rewards and public recognition of the fact that they've done really well, and he was just generally on top of all of it. So good performance was rewarded, poor performance was picked up on, and there was an ongoing coaching process. We spoke to the guy with the other half of the team who had the same initial 25% reduction in crashes, but had now actually gone up to a worse safety record than they'd had initially. And what he said was, oh yeah, the data, yeah, I think I get a report once a month, and we said, okay, what do you do with it? And he said, oh, we file it. Do you want me to? I'll get them out. You can have a look at them. And of course, what had happened was not only was he not rewarding the good drivers to incentivize good behavior and working with the underperforming drivers to improve their performance, but he'd actually managed to send an indirect message out to all the drivers that he wasn't actually interested in safety. Before, when they knew that their performance wasn't being monitored, they'd had a certain level of safety. When they thought their performance was being monitored, suddenly they'd all behaved a lot more safely. But then gradually, when incidents happened and they saw that actually nobody was really looking at it, it actually made them think, oh, actually, the management aren't as concerned about safety as we thought they were, and as they seem to be telling us about in the first instance. So acting on that information is really, really crucial. And if you can use the idea of a team score among a group of drivers or at a particular office location and between locations, then those kind of things can be extremely helpful. You need to make sure you've got the right system to use as a driver management tool. A lot of them are set up to be vehicle management tools, fleet management tools. They center a lot around information from the vehicle. That's fine. But actually, things like the reporting you're getting back. Are you getting reporting and exception reporting that tells you what's happening by vehicle, or are you getting it so that it happens by driver? Can you tell the difference between one of your drivers driving their company vehicle and their spouse driving the company vehicle? Have you actually got a driver identification key which is recognized by the system so it can tell who's driving the vehicle? If you've got vehicles that are used by more than one driver in the depot, have they all got their own sort of driver tag which the system recognizes so it can tell who's driving the vehicle at a given time? Because you're trying to use this to manage the drivers. That's the key thing. It's the driver behavior you're managing, not the vehicle. It's try and manage how the vehicle is being driven. That's what's going to have the biggest effect on safety. And then behind that, it's not just the physical system, the actual equipment itself, it's the right system in terms of driver management. And again, one of the things that the oil industry has been quite good at with this is they have a recommended practice on land transportation safety, and within that they have a number of guidance notes. One of the recommended practices for the use of in-vehicle monitoring systems and telematics is that you have to have a data management system that records how you're actually going to use the information, and that feeds into a driver management system. And they've got a number of pieces of guidance on that, which we can make available if you're interested. Okay, quick test here. Some of you may have seen this on social media. The task is to find the letter C. You're usually given a set period of time in which to do it, and obviously it's not as simple a task as it could be. If we give you the task and say, okay, now find the letter C, and it's already got a nice red circle around it, then that makes life a lot easier. But actually what you want your telematics solution to do for you in terms of flagging up and alerting is just to give you that, and that makes it much easier. You can instantly see what the problem is. It's giving you on a plate. It's making your job easier rather than making your job more difficult. If you get a system that actually minimizes the amount of effort that you have to put in, if the data comes to you rather than you having to go and look at the data, then that's when the system is most likely to be successful. In terms of how you set the trigger parameters, in terms of, you know, how do you actually tell at what point someone is speeding, you have to think about what's going to trigger an alert. You can set the parameters for speeding, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, all of these issues, and there is guidance out there on different thresholds and what different thresholds you can set. But if you, as one client we came across had, you have a system whereby as soon as someone is 1 kilometre an hour over the speed limit for a single second, then all your people who are non-problem speeders are just going to be flagged up. You just have a screen, if you like, that's covered in the letter C, rather than actually flagging up the drivers who are a particular problem. And again, within certain industries, there are industry standards which actually highlight what the suggested applications for those are, and make sure that everyone knows it. So make sure that everyone within the organisation knows actually what's going to trigger it. If you're saying that it's triggered at 10% over the speed limit for anything in excess of 10 seconds, then that helps you sort of sell the idea to your drivers. But again, you need to think about what the legal aspects are in terms of saying, well, hang on a minute, you know, are we therefore saying that actually going at 10% over the speed limit for, or more than 10% over the speed limit, but for shorter periods of time, is acceptable to us as a company? And think about what message that is you're giving to the drivers. So both from a sort of moral and legal standpoint, there are some issues there. You also need to think about what action is then taken and when the action is taken. So if you've got a system whereby you're now being alerted as to a certain driver behaviour, what are you going to do about it? And is that going to be done as a result of you get an alert and then as soon as the vehicle's engine is switched off at the end of that trip, you then make contact with the driver? Or is it something that's going to be rounded up at the end of the day or at the end of the week? In some cases, we've seen organisations who try to do this at the end of the month. Speaking personally, I can't remember what I was doing on a particular journey, at a particular stage in a journey a month ago. I don't think most of us could. So the sooner you can actually talk to the driver about what happened and give them a chance to tell you about what happened and explain what the situation was, then the better things will be. In some cases, you'll find that over a period of time you end up with multiple systems across a fleet, or if you're dealing with different subcontractors, you'll find that you've got different systems across different contractors, or in some cases across different vehicle types. You'll find that it's not worth fitting a telematics solution that it delivers certain things to your heavy fleet, because you might discover that actually what you've got in terms of electronic tachograph is already delivering a percentage of that solution, so you decide against that, but you want to fit it to your light commercial fleet. So again, in terms of dealing with multiple systems, it really comes down to making sure when you add a system to your existing setup that you're actually going to be able to identify very clearly what your requirements are for that service provider, because you want the alerts to be coming in a similar way, you want the data to be compatible, if possible you want the systems to be incorporated together. If you're dealing with different contractors, then put the onus on the contractor to supply you with the reports, rather than, and the reports to be in a certain format, rather than trying to juggle 5 different formats of report from 5 different service providers. Just send out the contractor, this is the format that we want the data in, and if all you're looking at is the exceptions, it shouldn't be too onerous a task for you. As soon as you end up with information overload, as soon as you end up with too much information that isn't actually really pertinent and really helpful, the less you're likely to use the system, and then that means that not only have you wasted the investment, but you're potentially sending a dangerous message out in terms of how you're actually looking at safety. Further pitfalls in terms of choosing systems are when you get given a particular price, you get told everything that the system can do, and you then discover that actually some of the functionality that you're interested in is going to cost more. You might, for example, be told that the system can be used for incident investigation, and then you find out that actually it's only recording speed at 1 second intervals, whereas for really effective incident investigation, you need it to be recording at about 500 hertz to actually find out what's happening in that last second that the crash is taking place in, rather than 1 second intervals along the journey which led to it. So again, it may be that you need to say, well, actually, let's get some serious definition on exactly what's included in the package, and are there additional costs, are there on-costs, are there ongoing costs for sort of SMS data alerts or whatever it might be. Then think about whether you're actually going to use these extras. It's fine saying, oh yeah, that'd be good, and it's only an extra this much, so we can have that functionality as well. But if you're not going to use it, my recommendation would be to leave it off. Get the system that you need rather than all the different things that are available. Also think about which different factors can be changed later on. If it's not possible to change or add functionality as you go along, that doesn't mean you should reject the system, but it just means you need to take it into account in terms of how long you think the longevity of you using this particular system is going to be. And if it can be changed later, then also again look at how much it's going to cost to make changes. You might be better off having a certain functionality for the whole length of the contract, rather than saying, well, we don't need that now, we'll look at adding that in 3 years' time. In some cases, you are actually better off starting to pay for it straight off. So to sort of summarize, essentially it's management information. And like any management information, if you don't use it, then you might as well not have it. So if you've got information on how much your phone bill is, well, that's fine, that's lovely, but actually unless you look at how much your phone bill is and you then take action to make sure that you are on the best rates for your phone bill and that you're reducing the amount of usage of the phone at peak rate times, etc., then actually it's only then that you're using that management information. Otherwise, you might as well save your time and look at something else. And ideally, you want a system that actually flags up if you've got a particularly high phone bill or if you're getting close to the thresholds. So think about who needs to know what. Who within the organisation needs to know what information. That then gives you a list of the information, and it also gives you your distribution channels for that information. Think about when they need to know it. You might need different reports to be issued and generated by the system for people at different levels within the hierarchy of the organisation. Ideally, you want a system that's able to do all of that for you automatically. Do they need it instantly? Do they need it same day, same week, or do they need it just some kind of summary on a quarterly basis? You need to think about how they'll act on that information once they've got it. If there are no possible actions they can take once they've got that information, then actually they probably don't need that information. So to really use telematics to your advantage, you need to, as far as possible, work on an identified need and use the system to automate, because then that's less work for you rather than more, to inform you, and crucially to act. Because if you don't act on the information, A, there was no point having it, and B, you might actually leave yourself more vulnerable than you needed to be. That's me done. I'll hand back over to Dave, and if any of you got any questions at this stage, have to deal with them now. If not, then I'll still be around until the end of the webinar.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Sol. And yeah, as Sol says, if you have any questions, then please do use the question box on the right-hand side drop-down menu. So please type in a question in there, and I can put them to Sol. We've got a question that's coming from Kevin Christian, which I guess is a dilemma that many companies face. But his question really is do drivers and unions, etc., think it's a spy in the cab? I guess it's this kind of Big Brother's watching you. From your background and various companies previously and your experience, how have you kind of overcome this, or what's the kind of best advice out there when it comes down to actually engaging drivers and unions?
It very much comes down to making sure from the outset that you were engaging drivers' representation and unions in the process. Oddly enough, one of the companies where one of the organisations we had most resistance with in terms of trying to introduce just basic things like license checking, checking documents of people's road fleet vehicles, was actually trying to introduce it into a union. And being the health and safety manager of a union was an interesting position for the guy to be in. In terms of more generally with introducing telematics, actually showing them what the benefits are to them, rather than it just being this, oh, it's a spy in the cab. So if you can get functionality that includes things like we get an automated alert if there is a deceleration that is so sudden that it indicates that our vehicle has probably actually been in a crash. We get automatic notification of that, and we can put an emergency response plan in place. We can get onto the emergency services, we can try and contact the driver, we can give the emergency services an accurate piece of information of where that vehicle is, almost like a sort of a semi-manual version of the eCall system when that comes around. Then all of those things can be used to sell it to unions and to drivers as something that's actually helping them rather than hindering them. And again, this thing of sort of consequence management. So if you drive badly, then it's going to impact you in one way. If you drive well, then that'll impact you in a different way. One vehicle fleet we worked with monitored fuel use, and they actually said, okay, we are going to take 50% of all the fuel savings we get, and we're going to put that into a reward pot, which is designed to produce vouchers for the drivers who are, so something like, I think the top 5 drivers in the company had this sort of, a certain proportion of the fuel savings split between them. Which then encouraged everyone to drive better and encouraged everyone to, sort of to work on their peers, because they knew that the more fuel that their colleagues saved, the better situation they were going to be in. So there's a number of different ways of doing it, but it does come down to making sure that they're being used for positive reinforcement as well as just punishment, so positive reinforcement and recognition, and promoting the fact that there are benefits to employees from the point of view of their own safety, etc. So things like if you get someone who has got a speeding issue, rather than just saying, okay, we're going to penalise you because you were speeding in a company vehicle, say, okay, we recognise that it's no benefit to you if you get fines you've got to pay, and if you end up being disqualified through totting up and lose your job. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go down the route of trying to put you through sort of some education processes. We're going to work out if there's anything that we as an employer are doing which is putting additional pressure on you, which is making you break the speed limit, be late for meetings, feel pressures, feel distracted, and we're going to give you some practical hints and tips on how you can avoid that inadvertent speeding. So things like driving in third gear in a 30 limit, depending on what the vehicle is, all those kind of things that help it be seen as a constructive thing rather than just this is management with a big stick. But depending on your ongoing relationship with your workforce, it's more or less difficult in different organisations.
Yes, definitely, and something that we would echo as well. And for those of you who are Brake members, we have a lot of guidance reports and advice on this, but we will share some more information at the close of this webinar as well, and that engagement has to be early on, and I guess as well, so it kind of shows as a organisation that you care about your staff as well, doesn't it? If you're there have got systems in place and you're actually looking after their welfare and taking road safety seriously and using technology as an advancement of that, it shows that actually, look, you as an employer are looking after them. I guess we have an example as well from a company that was looking at implementing telematics, and they actually did have, during a trial period, it did actually have an incident where unfortunately a cyclist was killed. But the information that company actually had to hand within an hours, they were able to present to the police as evidence to show that actually that driver wasn't doing anything. It was a cyclist had actually come from a side lane and came into the vehicle, and they had telematics and cameras on board of that vehicle at the time, and it did actually show that the driver was well within his speed limit. He wasn't distracted. He was driving well within the law. And that there's nothing that driver could have done, unfortunately, to prevent that tragic crash. But had they not had that, then obviously there could have been a very lengthy case and obviously more heartache for the driver as well to go through that through the courts and whatever else. So there are examples that we have that we can share to show that. Just another, I won't hold you on too much. So I guess another one as well is. Someone's a couple of questions here saying kind of how do you tell telematics contractors from the middlemen? I mean, how I guess there are companies out there that can provide that data as well, aren't they? And aren't the actual contractor? I mean, what's the advice kind of out there for making sure you kind of go into I guess a respectable dealer or getting the right product?
Again, a lot of that tends to come down to sort of asking the right questions at the outset. So asking them about where their manufacturing facility is, whether they manufacture their own components or whether they're sort of assembling components that are produced elsewhere. Trying to find out there are some very good kind of white boxed solutions out there, and actually the difference you're paying for in dealing with a particular provider is that actually what they're providing is a better after sales service, but finding out things like sort of what the staffing levels are, what their where their technicians are based, how many technicians they've got, what the training is. All those are different questions that you can ask to probe and try and get a little bit further into to where they are. But in a lot of cases, it is just a case of saying, okay, ask enough questions about the manufacture of the equipment itself and its components, and you can fairly swiftly usually identify what's the sort of the rebadged version of someone else's equipment. Although in terms of, as I say, in terms of dealing with that, because there is this issue of it's the local support. It may well be that actually if you've got local support, local adaptability that is in excess of what the main manufacturer would supply, and a good example of that is we had a system which was being manufactured in Germany. The company were based in Uganda. They tried to deal with the manufacturer in Germany on lots and lots of occasions, and the kit was good, but the level of support wasn't. And then G4S took over management of that locally, and actually the support that they got in G4S locally in Kampala particularly was excellent. And so they were using the same equipment, but because the after-sales support was there, it turned into a much better solution for them. So don't necessarily knock out the idea of dealing with a middleman sort of full stop, but equally make sure that you do actually know that that's what you're doing, and it's a conscious decision to do that.
Yeah, and this is Emeka who's asked these questions, and I think she's kind of asked her a ideal list of products and what they can do for you. I'm sure there must be comparison sites out there, but I guess the main advice really is as you said beforehand on those lists of why you get telematics. Your boss says, and a good salesman is that what information do you want to get from it? And I know Steve later is going to present as well, kind of, making sure you're getting the right information from it. It's choosing that, isn't it? Deciding, right, we want to tackle this, or we're looking at a particular issue, right, what best product can fit that. Another final question, I think, here from Ben Stabler. Question for anyone, but whether basically it says, can or should telematics replace a driver training program to reduce road risk? I mean, from our point of view, obviously it should work. If you are going to have telematics, it should work alongside it, and I think that's kind of what Sol's alluded to as well with his presentation, that if you don't act upon that information that your telematics system's giving you, then that is when there is a problem. What you want to do is make sure that you're getting the right information from your telematics and then acting on it. So you need to be having driver training alongside that as well, because it's about driver engagement. And as Sol said there, if your telematics is flagging up that your driver is speeding, or you have a prolific speeder and someone commonly going over the speed limit, you need to talk to them and have a process in place within your organisation to decide, right, what are we going to do? What steps do I need to take? Driver training can be part of that, to actually look at why they are taking those risks, and also, I guess, understanding really from a behaviour point of view why they feel the need to speed. Is it a case that as a company you need to do something to ease the workload so they're not trying to do as many drops as in one day, or is it actually just an educational thing where actually they don't actually realise the consequences of going 35 in a 30, and actually how much of a difference that can have, and if they had a crash. So I guess it's a mixture of driver training alongside that.
Yeah, it's I think from my perspective, it's a little bit like again, with anything, it's how do you identify what the problem is, and then what you may treat it with might be driver training. But you can either use it to prioritise who gets driver training when, so you target it at the drivers who seem to have sort of more of an issue, or you use it to tailor it. So if you've still got driver training that you're using as an across-the-board tool, to be able to say to an instructor, okay, this guy that you're having driver training with today, or this group of 2-3 people you're having driver training with today, none of them have really got a problem with speeding from the telematics, but they've all got a problem with harsh braking. So it's possible that their anticipation of what's up ahead of them isn't as good, and then that enables the trainer to be able to look at that and work on that. So I definitely don't see it as an either or. It's you have to have it as sort of the two working hand in hand. And leaping back to the first question that Kevin Christian asked regarding sort of drivers and unions, when the Metropolitan Police first introduced instant data recorders, they had quite a lot of resistance from the sort of, well, it's spy in the cab type stuff. And then the first incident that they actually had with a vehicle that was fitted with an accident data recorder, it managed to completely exonerate the officer, and it proved that it was the member of the public who was at fault rather than them. So again, selling it to employees as the this is your friend rather than the opponent work for them there as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So I'll let you catch your breath and have a glass of water. If any other questions do come in, then do feel free to put these to Sol, and we can share them with him at the end if we have time. So we now will hand over to Steve Palmer, who has waited patiently, hopefully, and is still there. So Steve is from Aviva and is going to talk more, probably overlapping some of the aspects that Sol's talked about there, but kind of some advice on user data, but choosing telematics really, and obviously how that can benefit your insurer really, and making sure that you work closely with them. Thanks very much, Steve.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Dave just said there is a fair bit of overlap. Thanks, Sol. But I'm sure we'll cover some other areas that we haven't touched on there. In case you don't know, my background isn't actually insurance, it's fleet management. So I've been in the industry for most of my life now, ex-fleet manager. and recruited by Norwich Union in 2001. Obviously later became Aviva. The largest, or one of the largest, commercial vehicle insurers in Europe, and we have a massive fleet account in the UK, and obviously from time to time we come across telematics systems and how they're being used and whatever. So we've got a fairly good nuts and bolts, if you like, sort of view on telematics systems. We see around 600 fleets every year, and a lot of those, as I say, have got these telematics systems. As an insurer, we're not the first to actually go into telematics, and we won't be the last, but we have a wealth of sort of experience, if you like, in the telematics industry. We've been linked to a number of products over the years, the last one being a system called FleetWise Care, which is where we were giving out 2,000 black boxes in 2006 to various fleets to try to see whether we could record their data and improve their driver performance. Obviously, attitudes have changed dramatically since then, and there's a softening to telematic systems now as they become more approved, if you like, by everybody. But then it was a real uphill struggle, and we couldn't give them away. But when we did actually put them into fleets, we found around about 600 fleets actually fitted them, and we found, as Saul mentioned earlier on with his studies in Africa, half of them got better and half of them got worse, and it was really, really difficult to actually say that it actually worked. And we spent a fortune on that product, and it didn't sort of it didn't work. But we had to draw a line underneath it at the time because of various attitudes at the time. But as I say, it's softening now, and as an insurance company, what we're not doing now is aligning ourselves to a particular product, more to the actual telematics data and the performance of the account after it's driven. Obviously from the telematics data, the changes in attitudes, and obviously the changes in claims experience as well. So we've got a bit of an open mind as to whose system's best, who's worst, what have you, and we don't really care as long as the client's actually benefiting from that. We also have, as you've probably seen on the TV, the Aviva app. We've been using that for quite some time, rewarding good drivers, using an app system on our personal line system as well. So we're definitely into telematics. We see telematics as a major innovation, and I believe that certainly manufacturers vehicle manufacturers will be linking themselves to particular systems or making their own. Commercial vehicles already have a lot of those systems already in place, and I suspect that eventually there will be more uniform platforms providing these telematics data systems. So really from my point of view, really today what I thought I would do is just look at these topics which you can see now, and again, apologies, we've already covered some of these in Saul's presentation. What do you want to achieve by it? How are you going to use it? Are you risk management, duty of care obligations in place? And that's a big one for us because a lot of the fleets I see that have it don't have all of those boxes ticked to start with. Then I thought maybe we'll talk on about driver assist systems as well, some of the new latest technology which we can also link in with telematics as well. So if you could just turn me over, please, sir. Okay, so just going back to this, and I apologise, we'll flick over a lot of this stuff as we go. First slide, please, yeah. So these are the types of things that you can get, as we described already: journey history, duration, all your duty of care things there, your tracking and security of the vehicle or the asset, geofencing, has it gone outside of the areas that you're expecting it to operate it in, point of delivery, it can be linked to courier operators, for instance, wanting to say that they've, or confirm that they've actually delivered a parcel at a certain time to a number 23. Temperature control, obviously looking at refrigerated vehicles and carrying food and various other temperature sensitive goods. Maintenance scheduling, you know, most of the large goods vehicle operators have maintenance scheduling. Some of the leasing companies now with cars are fitting telematics in so that you can keep an eye just on that, on maintenance. Daily defect reporting as part of a PDA. Fuel consumption, it goes on and on and on. So if we can go to the next one, please, Dave. It also obviously covers driver behaviours, particular, as Saul mentioned before, driver ID. Does it do that? It's not good just having it in a vehicle that's used by 6 drivers. You want to know exactly who and when was using the vehicle, when it was speeding or whatever. Harsh braking, acceleration and cornering, and speeding by road type, and speed limit there as well. That's a key for us really. A lot of the older systems weren't particularly good, and they just gave a maximum speed. Driver feedback via in-vehicle speaker and warning. Is it giving the driver instant feedback whilst he's driving along, or is it just reporting him to the fleet manager, who will, at the end of the week, month, or whatever, print off his poor driving habits, his by exception report? Has it got a driver web portal, as Saul talked about before, on their mobile phone? And whereabouts are these systems fitted in the vehicles? Are they going to cause distractions? One of the things that we have seen recently is people, particularly in the commercial sector, being prosecuted for things being tagged onto the dash, and even, dare I say it, mobile PCs, I should say, being put on the dash and watching films while they're driving along. It happens, it's out there, so it's a consideration you need to take on board. Also, a direct ethanol reporting, that's first notification of loss. So again, it has some of the systems have G-force sensors in the vehicles linked to onboard cameras, giving instant notification with CCTV footage, if you had the cameras fitted, to whoever you desire it goes to, whether it be your insurer, whether it be your broker or a fleet manager. From an insurance point of view, the quicker the insurance company finds out about it, the more chance they've got of reducing fraudulent claims costs, and that's a major consideration, and I know a lot of the customers that I go out and see actually take that on board as well. Next one, please, Dave. Use in post-incident investigations. Before you can actually use that data, as Saul said before, you have to ensure that you've got clear and established crash investigation procedures and policies in place. You need to make sure that you've got the 10 essential elements, all the things that's covered by the Driving at Work guidance given out by the HSE, making sure that the culture and the behaviours are right in the business, right from the very top of the boardroom, right down to the drivers. You need to treat everybody the same, and you need to make sure that you do it quickly. It's no good, as Saul said before, about going back a month later. You need to be able to also publish incidents and trends and costs, and I suppose this actually links into the question we had about unions there. A long time ago, I worked for a very large organisation in the northeast. We had 700 vehicles that I used to look after. I also had about 1,500 drivers, because a lot of them were part-time drivers, and I decided to actually publish claims experience on the commercial vehicle drivers. I had 40 commercial vehicle drivers who were the best drivers you'll ever come across in their own minds. But when you actually look at their claims experience, it told a different story. And we had a very large union presence there. And as soon as I published this data, not putting any names on or registration numbers, there was an outcry and there was a grievance taken out against me. And the way I got around it was to simply get them all in a room and say, right, okay, you expect your people to work in a safe environment? Yes? Yep. Okay, well, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you think these claims and the costs and the types of accidents they happen are actually any good for you and your drivers? No, and immediately attitudes started to change. And I have to say that was 1998 when I left the industry. But now when I look at customers there, it's clear there that obviously engagement right from the very start with unions and also with your insurance companies and brokers to be able to benchmark your performance against others in the sector will help change the attitudes and minds of anybody that any doubters that you might come across. Okay, and obviously the financials, that's the cost-benefit analysis. You need to make sure you're not paying for anything that you're not going to use, and that's clear, very clear, dead simple, that one. Next one, please. Okay, how are you going to use it? Well, I mean, one of the main things I would say on this one, without going over everything here, is keep it simple. Keep it absolutely simple. Make sure that you know exactly what you want, and make sure that you get it delivered in the format that you need as well. But also as well, make sure that you can actually not just get your exception reporting, but delivered in a format that you can actually then use, or use maybe some data analytics companies to look at the data to try and look at the hidden data, if you like, more data. For instance, I'm thinking of you operate large goods vehicles and you go around a particular roundabout and you know there that you're carrying an unstable weight in the vehicle, like a container, for instance. You don't know the centre of gravity on that vehicle. You want to know that anything above sort of 10 miles an hour going around that roundabout is actually going to cause you your vehicle to overturn. And it's about making sure there that you can not just look at how fast vehicles are going, but also look at how fast they're going around a particular roundabout. So there's all that type of information and much, much more that you can get out of it. And again, data delivery to the drivers of company cars and vans through smart apps and phones and what have you, that makes massive sense to me. Next one, please. Training, again, data overload, you can get far too much, and most people that I go out and see who've got telematics, they only use it for one thing, to find out where their vehicle is. And that's a real sad indictment, but lots of organisations have literally bought it years ago, they've got functionality that they never use, or the person who was taught how to use it is gone now, and they don't know how to get onto a particular report. It's going to cost them money to actually train somebody up, and they're too busy, so it never happens. So, but there are options out there. Most telematics companies that you deal with now will be able to provide an in-house or sort of solution for you, or an outsourced solution, I should say, for you. So they'll do a lot of this stuff yourself. And also, as Saul mentioned there before, yeah, you can actually have a lot of this stuff automated. But at the end of the day, you've still got to read it. Next one, please. Include your insurance broker. Key thing this for me. If you've got a decent insurance company and broker, they will be able to benchmark your own fleet claims experience against others in the sector. So you'll need to be able to look at that information, share it with the brokers if need be, or the insurance companies, and get feedback. Conversely, highlight potential areas that obviously you'll need to target from your data, and that would give you maybe specific vehicle types. So maybe your company cars are your problem, or your commercial vehicles. Maybe it's a particular route that's causing you an issue in terms of claims. A depot maybe, or it could be something such as things like a particular type of incident that you're having, so reversing or low speed manoeuvring. Hitting third parties in the rear, that's a classic one. The average cost of a hit third party in the rear to an insurance company with an average personal injury claim is about £11,000. It's the biggest driver of your premium, and if you've got a few of those, you need to be using the data that your telematics systems are giving you to actually improve that. And it drives further risk assessments. Again, if you're having those types of accidents, you need to be then reflecting those in your health and safety risk assessments relating to driving at work, and then obviously from there deciding what risk reduction training programs you need. You need to share this data with drivers. Again, clarity has to be the key here, really. You've got to share it with your health and safety committees, with your unions as well. Get them involved. It's their members. You know, they're supposed to be making sure that they've got a safe place for their employee or their members to work. Get involved with directors and senior management, and right down to supervisors. And all of this will assist in persuading the need to improve driver performance and potentially include telematic systems as well. Next one, please. Okay, so I thought really maybe we've talked where are we? Yeah, we've talked about telematics here. I think there's other things there that as fleet operators you do actually need to know about. And whilst telematics are fantastic, they're not a silver bullet, and they're only as good as the people that's actually using them. So what I would suggest you do, maybe if you don't already know about this, is maybe look at some of the emerging technologies. There's lots of other tools in the box, and one of them is ADAS, which is the collective name for Advanced Driving Assist Systems, particularly for collision avoidance. That's where most of your claims, as I say before, the claims cost is actually coming from. And 90% of all the incidents in the real world are down to driver error, and probably around about a third of those are actually front to rear crashes, which is the biggest cost, as I mentioned there before. AEB is a system that will basically look forward from the vehicle, depending on, there's two sort of systems. One uses small sensors in the bumpers, the other ones use lasers and cameras. And basically what it does is it monitors the traffic flow in front of you through the windscreen. It will then have known shapes or algorithms, and each vehicle or target type has its own algorithm. So for instance, you could have a pedestrian, it could be a cyclist, it could be a car, it could be a truck. Basically what happens is the camera recognizes one of these shapes, sends a signal to a laser, if you like, it's called a radar, and that works out the distance between you and the velocity of your vehicle approaching that target. It will then give out audible warnings to the drivers and visual warnings on the dash on most of them if they're too close, and if they don't take corrective action to slow the vehicle down in the potential imminent crash, then the vehicle will intervene itself and will stop the vehicle or reduce it significantly to reduce the injury or the actual crash. So that type of thing is not expensive in terms of when you compare it against the cost of an insurance claim. For a bodily injury claim, for instance, up to £11,000, you're looking at anything starting from about £350 on most vehicles these days. It's also been so popular and such a good safety feature that it's now been adopted as part of a EU directive, which requires all new commercial vehicles above 7.5 tons registered in the UK and Europe to actually have this fitted from the 1st of November last year. So, and it's also been recognised as part of the NCAP safety ratings on all new cars going forward. So if any manufacturer wants to get a 5-star rating in the future, they're going to find it more and more difficult if their vehicles don't have AEB fitted, either as standard or as an option. So it's a massive piece of technology, very, very low cost, but when you compare that with also the driving characteristics that you can identify from a telematics system, it just makes sense to have it. I've put a link on there to the Thatcham website there, which you can't help be impressed with the systems when you see some of the videos of it operating. The other thing as well, of course, is it's only available on new vehicles. It's not available as an aftermarket because of the technology needed to actually put the brakes on. But there is another system out there which is made by the same company who's behind AEB for the vast majority of vehicle manufacturers, and that's a company called Mobileye. Now, I'm not doing a sales pitch on them here, but they use the same technology in terms of a camera on the windscreen looking forward, and it actually picks up the distances between you and the vehicle in front, and if you're too close, it will give you an audible and a visual warning, and it'll keep on doing that until you increase the distance between you and that vehicle. It'll also look at headway monitoring, which is the distance actually between that your average time that you're following the vehicle in front. It detects vulnerable road users, anybody who might step in front of you, within a limited view, obviously from the camera. And also one of the other things it does is if you've got an issue with drivers speeding, it actually picks up a speed limit sign as it goes past. So if it picks it up at 30 miles an hour and the driver's down 40, then it'll go off and it'll keep on going off. And again, the beauty about this system is if you have telematics system to your vehicle, fitted to your vehicle, then you can actually link this system to your telematics. So effectively, when you put this system into the vehicle in the first month, you leave it on what we call dumb record. So basically, it doesn't give the driver any audio or visual warnings in the vehicle as and when he does something. Merely it records what he's doing. That then builds up on the telematics system and is sent to the fleet manager on his desktop. So he has the before. After a month, you switch it on. You then get the after, and you then find there that the driver starts to react to the signals he's being given in the vehicle. Somebody said to me that maybe we should get his wife's voice and imprint over the system so that when he gets wrong, it's his missus telling him off. But there's another story. So, we've seen customers fitting this system who have had a 92% reduction in headway forward monitoring, if you like, so increasing the distance between them, and also the benefits of obviously being able to have speed limit warning. It also has lane departure on there as well, so as and when the vehicle starts to cross a white line without the indicator being put on, it gives the driver a warning as well. So looking at these systems, integrating these systems, and looking around at what else is out there is really important for me. And as I say, telematics are great, but they're not the be all and end all. Next slide, please, Dave. So I suppose really that's me in a nutshell. I've tried not to spend too much time on the other stuff that the other guys, presenters, have been talking about already, but we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. I've maybe got a slightly different view in terms of insurance, but if you carry on doing these things and implementing these things, and you take all of these things that we've taken into consideration, then you should see some improvements in your performance. So just to summarise, Telematics is a fantastic tool, and I definitely support it, but like drivers, it has its limitations, and usually those are the people operating it. It needs to be used as part of an integrated drive network policy and a company culture. If you haven't got that, you're wasting your time. You need to be clear on what your data you want is and how you'll use it, and don't flood yourself with data. It can easily happen. I see it all the time. And you have to have legal responsibilities to use the data correctly to ensure that your vehicles are used lawfully. So yeah, you're required, you know about them breaking the law, you've got to do something with it, as Saul said before. If not, then you'll stand in court next to them. And don't ignore other emerging technologies such as advanced driving assist systems. They're here to stay, they're going to be here. These systems are actually what's in driverless cars. I'm hoping I'm retired before they come out. But certainly, thanks very much for your time. If you've got any questions, please shout them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for your presentation there, and hopefully that has given some food for thought and some more pointers to add on to other presentations there. Quick question here from Julian Hill for yourself, Steve. Does or can Mobileye record actual footage that can be viewed after?
No, it can't. No,
that's not its purpose, is it?
It's not its purpose. It's purely to manage distance and objects in front. It's a forward collision warning system. I'm sure that could be Mobileye too. Probably they're probably looking at that, but I don't know of anything at this moment in time. But certainly that linked in with your telematics system and maybe your forward-facing camera. You're talking about a lot of money here, but if I had my view on a forward-facing camera with an SD card and Mobileye, it will be the latter every time I spend the money.
And I guess it's been touched upon both by yourselves included in the telematics with regards to cameras, obviously being integrated a lot with them. I mean, from your point of view, Steve, I guess it's, as you said before, it's about letting your insurer know as soon as possible, but I guess, is it the same as well if you've got cameras on board and there's been an incident? I guess you need to know whether there is camera footage, and that can obviously help your case.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. If you've got that AEB fitted to your vehicles, then you need to advise us. Now, if you've got a large goods vehicle or registered after the 1st of November last year, then we'll know about that from the motor insurance database. So we'll be able to reflect that, because we are reflecting that in the cost of your premium now, because it's been recognised by Thatcham there that cars now fitted with that technology are seeing a reduction of around about 8% in their premium on personal lines, and what we're doing is we're trying to actually include that as well on commercial vehicles. Now, commercial vehicles are easy to pick that up, but cars are not. So if you've got an option on the car and somebody goes and gets that option, you need to tell your insurance company, well, if it's Aviva, because I think we're the only one that's doing it at the moment, I might be wrong, but we can actually reflect that in the premium. In terms of cameras, there's two aspects to this really as far as I'm concerned. First of all is you need to make sure that if you have an incident or a crash, as we call them, you need to inform us immediately, and preferably within 3 hours of the incident, because it's in that time that you'll get a phone call from an accident management company who will be acting on behalf of the third party you just ran into, and they'll already have it sewn up. So if you've got footage which actually demonstrates to us as an insurer that you weren't to blame, then we can quickly make this claim go away. If you were to blame, then it also assists us in stop dragging our heels and get on with paying the claim. If it was our own fault, it's pointless going to court and spending a fortune just to lose. So, it's really important to get that. And in terms of cameras which are switched on and are looking all around the vehicle, there is a number of systems out there, multi-camera systems, and all of them are excellent, but they probably cost about £2,500. If you've got cameras fitted to your vehicle and you can demonstrate that you also have a robust risk management system and driving at work policy, then your insurance company will look favourably on that. Now obviously I can't give you a discount figure on there at all, and we don't do that normally. We say earn it, you show us that you've improved, but if you've got that evidence, then we will take that into consideration at renewal time.
Thanks very much, Steve. That's really helpful. And Helen Fisher's contributed here saying with cameras you might also end up picking up someone else's incident and be asked to provide that information by the police as part of an investigation into it. So often we see this, don't we, and they're often shared on Fleet News websites or other websites. We're often getting other incidents, so actually it can assist yourselves if somebody else has got that footage.
It can, and again, don't forget to use the footage that you've got of that incident as part of your accident investigation. You know, it's not just a case of filling in the claim form. It's why did the accident occur? Is our driver guilty? If so, what did he or she do wrong? And what can we do as an employer to reduce the potential for that occurring again? So again, it goes back to the risk assessment. Maybe, you know, if it's a common issue, reversing, for instance. But you need to make sure that you're using that data. And also, if you've got systems that have SD cards, there has been some rumours in the press recently, and a couple of people have actually said it to me anecdotally, that their SD cards are not particularly reliable, i.e. they rely on data being there, and when they go to pull it out, it's not there, it's written over, or it hasn't been working for months. So again, I would suggest if you've got SD cards, first of all, you format them every month or whatever recommendations the camera manufacturer gives out, and also as well that you occasionally just take it out and just check to see whether it is actually recording incidents.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve, for that, and thank you very much for your time. As I said earlier, if anybody has any questions at all, then do feel free to share them afterwards. I've just got a few quick pointers that I'm going to go through just to conclude. So obviously it has been mentioned about using telematics to monitor speed and actually how you need to use that to then actually advise you and work with your drivers through various behaviour or training, really. So from our point of view, this is one of the main reasons really why we believe that obviously speed is something that you can tackle and can be is important. Just a few points there. Obviously the speed is a factor in almost all road casualties. The harder a vehicle hits, the more damage you're going to do. Obviously as well, your drivers who are out there on the roads have multiple jobs to do. The slower they drive and they stick well within the speed limits, the more time they've got to think and brake and avoid that collision in the first place. And let's not forget there's no safe speed to hit somebody. Also, these small increases in speed equals a much greater stopping distance. So this is something that you need to be communicating to your drivers. We've all seen this probably, typical stopping distances, something that's been around for a while, but I think when you actually see it written down, it really does add to it, especially if you've got drivers driving around schools and built-up areas. So this is where telematics can come into place with regards to journey planning. You can make sure that actually you're looking at journey planning and making sure your drivers aren't going to be driving past schools at 20 past 8 in the morning. They're not going to built up areas, etc., etc. And little diagrams like this can really help to get across messaging to your drivers about speeding and the importance of not speeding and how it can change. This one in particular is one that we have available through Brake, and you're more than welcome to use this to actually illustrate the differences, especially at these lower speed. So for example, Sol mentioned about your telematics and actually having it, you know, some companies have it at 10% or whatever you're going to monitor the speed, but from a moral and legal point of view, are you then saying it's fine to drive at 35 miles an hour or 33 miles an hour in a 30, etc.? So here's just some examples really of the differences and the impact it can have on a person, all the way from 20 miles an hour on your left, even up to 25, 30 and 35 miles an hour. So it's a really good tool, and we have lots of images like this to really help you kind of communicate and get those messages across to your drivers. And this is also where you can really make a difference as well as a fleet and as an organisation. 1/3 of crashes involve an at-work driver, and at-work drivers are 42% more likely to be involved in a crash. And work-related factors lead to employees to speed. So this is stresses that are put upon them. And speeding, as we've heard before, is expensive for companies, not only through your insurance premiums, but the actual crashes that occur from them, etc., etc. So, you know, and also, I know we've talked about drivers and unions, but drivers will listen to you if it's written within their documents, within their handbook, within policy, that they need to stay within the speed limits. They know that the system and technology is going to be there to use there. Then it's a behavioural change that you can implement. So let's not forget, as an organisation, as a company, you really have an important role to play, and you have a fantastic opportunity really to not only care for and look after those drivers that you employ, but make sure that actually you're creating a workforce that are safe when they're driving for you, but also take that into their own home life and improve the community around where your business is. So it's a really important way to kind of get that messaging out there, and don't forget as a business actually how much you can make a difference rather than waiting for government legislation and other factors to take place. You as an employee can make a real big difference, and you know, it's important that you don't forget that. As I mentioned before, we have our pledge. I'm not going to go into it in detail now, but one of our main ones is about staying well within the speed limits. And as we mentioned before, driver behaviour and understanding the reason why you need to drive within those speed limits is a really important message to get to your drivers, to make sure that they're not going to be going over the speed limit in the first place. So if your telematics is going to be showing up these incidents around speeding, then you need to be talking and engaging with your drivers to try and get around that mindset of why they're speeding. Is it something as a company that you can do to improve it, or is it something that you can help train them and understand, well actually yes, going even a small amount over the speed limit really can have a detrimental impact on not only if a crash happened, but also the knock-on effect of losing a license, or the impact of you as a company with your brand and logos all over a vehicle. So just to recap, here are just some final events that we've got coming up. Please do make a note of our Fleet Safety Conference and our Fleet Safety Awards that are coming up in May. The conference 26th of May, but the deadline for the Fleet Safety Awards entries is 20th May. So if you've heard some good information here today and you're already using telematics or looking at it, or you've got other aspects within your organization where you think you're doing really well and have made improvements with regards to it could be incident rates being reduced, it could be reducing your insurance premiums, there could be a whole load of areas where you've improved fleet safety, then please do look at entering our awards, and it'd be great to have you enter. But also we have a big awards ceremony at the end of September, and it's a good event with 300-400 people, and it would be great to have lots of you involved again. There's also those other events that I mentioned earlier. But thank you very much for everybody for attending today. I'll leave you with that. Thank you again for our speakers who've given up their time today. So really appreciate their input, and hopefully you found their information knowledgeable. And thank you to Telegis for sponsoring. A recording of this webinar along with presentations will be sent to you this afternoon, so I will send you a link to this recording plus all the presentations along with some useful information which you can read up on in your own time. But in the meantime, if you have any further questions, then don't hesitate to get in touch with the Brake team, and we look forward to hopefully working with you soon. Thank you again. Bye.